Our next sweet treat is going to be a dark chocolate truffle with a fig, walnut, and honey filling. It's going to be great. Welcome to
Hungaritas!
Also, very simple recipe. We're just going to need some dry figs. You want them to be a little moist, so if you can see how mine are soft, they're malleable, I can move them around. If you've had them sitting around for a while and they're a bit hard, just cover them with hot water and then cover up that bowl for like 5 minutes. Drain the excess water, kind of squeeze the extra water out of the fruit, and that will kind of rehydrate them a bit. We're also going to have use some toasted walnuts, honey, vanilla, and our dark chocolate, of course. So I've already toasted our walnuts. This is about half a cup, and I'm going to take these walnuts and I'm just going to cut them up. We don't want tiny pieces, but we don't want big ones. Remember, this is going to be our filling, so they need to be small enough where we can roll them into a ball shape. And the honey and the figs will help fill in the gaps between these walnuts, but it's going to be a lot easier to work with if they're cut up. I don't want to put them in the food processor because then they'll be too fine and it'll just be like, it's too easy to let it go a little too long and turn it into like a walnut flour instead of chopped walnuts. Walnuts are pretty easy to chop compared to other nuts because they're a little bit on the softer side and they're not round. Alright, that seems good enough. I'm going to take these chopped walnuts of ours and I'm going to put them in a bowl for later. Now that we're done chopping our walnuts and we've put those aside, let's work on the rest of our filling. Here is some of the figs, the dried figs I'm going to use. It's about half a cup also. Kind of roughly eyeballed it to be 1-to-1 with the walnuts. I'm going to throw that in our food processor. I'm going to add about 1/4 of a cup of honey. You can smell those walnuts from that bowl. They smell amazing. And we're going to add just a little bit of vanilla. Maybe just like 1/4 of a teaspoon. And now we'll start blending it. So that's looking pretty good. You can see here it's liquefying pretty well. And boy, can I smell the honey. I'm just going to add a little bit of water because I do want to thin it out. And this is hot water. I have the kettle on earlier. We just continue mixing. The goal is to have a pretty smooth, creamy paste. You don't want it to be too liquidy, but you also don't want it to be too dry or too stiff because remember, we're going to fold this into the walnut. Okay. So one thing is while you're mixing it, you might find that some of the fig gets onto the side. Just use a spatula. Just do this a couple times throughout the whole process, just to make sure that there's no larger chunks. It's not a big deal if there are. I'm just personally looking for that smooth texture. This looks pretty good. There's no big pieces. It's nice and thick, but not too thick. Now I'm gonna take this fig puree gonna just put it into the walnuts. So I'm gonna continue to mix this slowly. I want to make sure that the walnuts are evenly distributed in the filling. So interesting fact, I read the other day that apparently they believe figs might be the oldest cultivated plants by humans. It's kind of neat. This looks good. This looks pretty smooth. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to throw it in the freezer. I want it to get really hard so that I can actually scoop it and quickly mold it with my hands without it ending up all over my hands. So we'll put this in the freezer for about 20, 30 minutes just in case, and then we'll be ready to proceed. Okay, we've taken our fig and walnut filling out of the freezer, and as you can tell here, it's gotten really thick in there. So it'll still be kind of sticky, but it'll be easier to work with now that it's chilled. So I'm going to take about a spoonful, a teaspoon, and just going to roll it into a ball. As smooth as I can make it, just because we want it to be pretty. Okay. It's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about them being perfect, because we are going to throw them in the freezer again, and we can always smooth out any imperfections then. I want to throw them in the freezer again because we're going to be dipping them in some warm chocolate, and I want the chocolate to start to harden fairly quickly on these truffles. Okay, look at that. Now that we have our little fig walnut balls frozen, I've melted some dark chocolate, and we are going to go ahead and dip these balls into that dark chocolate. Let's see. So I'm going to use a fork and a toothpick to kind of help me with that. It's okay if there's some parts at the bottom. Once it hardens, we can break those off very carefully. You can see chocolate's already starting to harden on the first two, which is exactly what I'd expect because these are really, really cold right now. Don't worry if they're perfect. If you miss a spot, you can just dip it in the chocolate again after it dries. Just to show you, this one here, I had a little, this is from the fork. So the fork kind of broke it a little bit, and because of that, it's a little rough, and it didn't get coated with chocolate completely, which is fine. We can just go ahead and dip this side, and don't worry about it not being perfect. Like I said, we've got a solution for that too. So to hide some of these little rough spots, we are just gonna drizzle gently some chocolate. And then we'll just let these set for a few minutes and we'll be able to have a taste. Okay, and now for the taste test. This is great. I love the combination of those toasted walnuts, the sweetness from the fig, the honey, the almost bitterness from the dark chocolate. Really winning combination. And when you think about it, these ingredients, walnuts, figs, honey, dark chocolate, they're all good for you, aren't they? So this kind of makes it a health food. Enjoy. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please consider hitting the like button below. And if you'd like more content like this, the red subscribe button. Until next time, ciao!